video on schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a severe brain disorder in which people interpret reality abnormally. Schizophrenia can result in a combination of hallucinations, delusions, and extremely disordered thinking and behavior. People with schizophrenia may hear voices other people don't hear. They also might believe that other people are trying to read their minds, control their thoughts, or even plot against them to hurt them. They can terrify people who have the illness and make them withdrawn or extremely agitated, and even look to suicide for a cure to their confusion and isolation. The causes of schizophrenia can mainly be correlated with either genetics or brain chemistry. It has been widely known that schizophrenia runs in families. The illness occurs in 1% of the general population, but occurs in 10% of people who have a first-degree relative with the disorder, like a parent or a sister. People who have a second-degree relative with the disease can also have a higher risk of developing the disorder. However, some people have different brain chemistry and structure. Scientists think that an imbalance in the complex special chemical reactions in the brain involving certain neurotransmitters, specifically dopamine and glutamate, and possibly others, play a role in schizophrenia. Now let's take a look at some of the symptoms of schizophrenia. First of all, childhood schizophrenia is the same in adults but interferes with the child's behavior and development. However, most symptoms begin in teenage years or early to mid-adult years. Common symptoms include withdrawal from family and friends, a drop in performance at school, trouble sleeping, irritability or depressed mood, lack of motivation, or strange behavior. Compared with adults, teens may be less likely to have delusions or more likely to have visual hallucinations. Although in adults, schizophrenia involves a range of problems with thinking, mostly cognitive behavioral problems, or emotions. Signs and symptoms may vary, but they reflect an impaired ability to function. They commonly have delusions, hallucinations, disorganized thinking, abnormal motor behavior, and negative symptoms, referring to the reduced ability or lack of ability to function normally.
These are scans from Judy Rappaport and her colleagues at the National Institute of Mental Health, in which they studied children with very early onset schizophrenia. And you can see already in the top, there's areas that are red or orange, yellow, are places where there's less gray matter. And as they followed them over 5 years, comparing them to age-matched controls, you can see that particularly in areas like the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex or the superior temporal gyrus, there's a profound loss of gray matter.
Here is a brief summary of a mother's experience with her schizophrenic son. He lost 50 pounds during this time, 6 to 7 months. I took him to our family doctor who did a series of tests, including a drug test, but they all came back negative. He then started to zone out for long periods of time, 1 to 2 hours. He wouldn't blink very often or change his expression. I would ask him if anything was wrong, but he'd just shake his head no. Then he started to laugh during these times for no reason at all. He would sit and stare at his hands for hours. When I would ask him what was wrong with his hands, he said they were different than they used to be. During this entire period, his grades in school went from C's to D's, all to F's. The school would call and say that he would get up and walk out of class and just roam the halls alone. Starting in June, he started getting very aggressive, talking to himself and laughing in his room. He would get very upset and run out of his room, run down the stairs and outside. He started doing this every day, and it really started going downhill from there. He would never say he was hearing voices, but it was very apparent he was. He started talking in a language we did not understand, and after research I found these to be called word salads. He would call me by a name that no one understood. He said I was from a different planet sent here to kill him. He told his siblings they were from his planet and they were here to protect him from me. He would come out of his room, scream at all of us in the foreign language, and tell us we were all going to die. He would no longer watch TV, he just listened to Pink Floyd The Wall over and over again. In fact, he broke his CD player by doing this. He paced constantly, or just to do the opposite, not get out of bed for hours during the day. He would not sleep at all at night. He started to hallucinate. The walls had bugs on them, we all looked different. My eyebrows were pointed upward and my ears had grown. He said things were moving when they weren't, and during this time I was totally freaking out. Did you know that 1 in every 100 people will experience schizophrenia sometime during their lifetime? Symptoms can appear at any age but typically start in adult group and are divided into 2 groups, positive and negative symptoms. Did you also know that the most common hallucination is hearing voices that other people don't, and the estimated societal cost of schizophrenia in England is $11.8 billion per year? Can you recover? Yes. A review of 2,000 life histories have been found. 25% made a full recovery, 50% made at least a partial recovery, and 25% required long-term care. But recovery does not have to mean remission. Building meaningful and fulfilling lives is possible by effectively managing symptoms. The right kind of medication and treatment, like talking therapies, can also support this. So, who do you know? 1 in 10 people hear voices. A minority will go on to have a psychotic episode or longer-term schizophrenia. Even acclaimed thinkers and household names have even had psychotic experiences, like some of the people below. Did you also know that 24 million people worldwide, 220,000 people in England, are affected by schizophrenia, and more than 50% are not receiving appropriate care? So, what works? Psychological treatments such as cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as antipsychotic medication, can help this. However, did you know that only 10% of people receive a full course of cognitive behavioral therapy? And people with schizophrenia die 15 to 20 years earlier than average, mostly due to preventable physical conditions. So, are people with schizophrenia dangerous? Well, sensationalist news media exaggerates links between mental illnesses and criminal violence. And people with schizophrenia in the community are 14 times more likely to be victims of a violent crime rather than arrested for one. The reality is, violence is more closely linked with alcohol and drug misuse in those with and without mental illnesses.